a block west of where I was born.
Mm-hmm.
Myself, I was 3 years old. And then he opened the mine about the same distance to the east. So where I was born was right between two of the only two mines I know of that were actually inside McAllister. And they were both in what's now Fifth Ward, beside the penitentiary over there.
Yeah.
One was called Big Bowling, and the other was called Little Bowling. Somewhere or another, I have a picture of Big Bowling. My dad was firing shots when I was, the day I was born. I was told by people that were around there then. The woman that bathed me and dressed me died last summer. She was about 100 years old.
Oh.
And there are very few left around that remember, you know.
That's why we're trying to get them on tape now.
Yeah, I'm 75. And
sir, when were you born?
May the 10th, 1908.
1908. And what was your father's name?
Ernest Homer Albert.
Ernest Homer Albert.
And my mother's maiden name was Leona Ann Scott.
Mm-hmm.
And they lived over here. And I well remember living there, although I said 3 years old about when we moved away from there. We moved out the country. My dad farmed for quite a while. I don't know much about the history of my dad's mining.
When did he begin working in the mines?
I don't know. I think he was about 17 or 18 years old when he first worked.
Mm-hmm.
He was reared a farmer. He was born in Barry County, southwest Missouri, and his people went first to Kansas and then came down here. They landed in Krebs, I think, about 1890. That's a little town 3 miles east of here. And then they moved to Savannah, where his dad had a little hotel. His granddad had a hotel up in Missouri, and his dad had learned to be a hotel fellow. He ran a little hotel down here in Savannah. And then they moved. Then my dad's sister married a man by the name of Tom Boatwright, who was 1/8 Choctaw Indian and had a headright. So his sister was quite a bit older than he, 7 or 8 years older than he. Dad was born November 1882, and they then farmed out west of town here. My uncle, by marriage, having the right to get land, headright as an Indian, he got them land. They farmed there. And when my dad got big enough to make a little money, of course the mines were the paying jobs here, and he became quite an outstanding miner, very much sought after. And he had the most dangerous job in the mines when I was born. I was firing shots, you know.
Now, what exactly is that?
Well, when the men are working in a mine, I don't know, do you know the underground structure of a slope mine?
Not really.
Well, the slope headed south, and then when they got down into where the veins were good, the coal veins, they'd build what they called entries. They were straight out from the slope, each direction, east and west, and they would build out, go out in the entries, then up the slope. They would dig rooms, and that's where they'd get their coal mainly. Of course, they'd get some when they were sinking the main slope further when they were building the entry. But then the coal diggers all worked in these, had rooms, they called them. You see, here goes the land into, then going up, and the reason they went up the slope was that they'd get their cars down. You didn't have to push it, they'd just get it down to the entry. Going downhill, and then when they got down there, there was they laid a little track. They went over to the track where the slope was, and they pulled cars up 5 or 6 or more at a time with an engine up the top from the slope. But they would hook them on from the entries, and they'd have a mule with a driver, a mule driver, come in and get the cars, hook them up, take them over, and hitch them onto the main trip going up the tip. And then when they'd finished their day's work in preparation for the next day's work, they would clean up everything. They would drill holes with a drill about that big around. It'd go right up in the coal. And they'd pack powder in there, shot powder, explosive powder. And they'd put a cap and a fuse, put it out, and then the shot fire was the man that went out after the mine was cleared, and then set the fuses and blasted so the coal would be loosened, and they could, next day when they loaded and dug, they got it out. They'd repeat that day after day. That's how they dug coal in those days. Of course, they'd use a pick and shovel too, but you had to loosen it. You could never get it out of there with just a pick. So that was his job when I was born.
How thick was a coal vein?
I'm not sure. I think it was about 4 feet or a little over there, 4.5, something like that. They vary all the way from 3.5 feet down around McCurtain. I think some of the veins were 8 or 10 feet. But the coal wasn't quite as good as it was here, as I understand it. Of course, I don't know a whole lot. I remember I was born in a coal camp. The Bolin Camp, they called it, the Bolin Darnell Mine. They had that mine there, and they had houses they built and rented them to their miners. I was born in a coal mining house. They were 4-room frame, unpainted frame houses. They turned gray after a few years. I remember it was a gray-looking house.
How many people lived in the camp?
Oh, I don't know. It's just a section of the town over there. It's still there, but they've been replaced by modern houses. I have no idea. I suppose there are people here probably still living that could tell you more. Most of the people that really knew them in that period are dead. They, I'm sure there were at least 100 of those houses over there. I feel there were. I just remember where they were. But they're all gone now. None of them are left. They've only a few years ago, the last ones fell in. So it's all now completely changed. Then my dad was a gasman. He became a gasman. And I think he'd already done something. Those were the 2 highest paying jobs underneath the mine. Was a gasman. He had to have a state certificate to be a gasman.
Now, what does a gasman do?
Firebug, they called him. The man who fired the shots would do it after work in the evening. Then before work, early in the morning, say 4 o'clock or something like that, the gasman would go down in. He had a little he had a little lantern that he held up along the wall, and if there was gas there, it would flare up. So he would examine the mine for gas and for air to make sure that the air was all right, that air was coming in. And he did that kind of work a long time. And then he served as pit boss some, and then I remember when I was a little bitty kid, about 2 years old, I guess, they opened the Little Bolin mine, which was east of us. My dad and another man opened that mine, and he made a lot of money for a short time for that period, sometimes $1,000 a month, which was a whole lot of money in those days, because a coal digger wouldn't make over $3 a day. And a gasman make about 4 or 5, shot fire, and then the engineer make maybe up the top, make $125 a month, something like that. But they opened that mine then, and they had trouble with water coming in. I think it's seepage from maybe the other old mine or other mines had been around, and they sold it. And it was finally after that it worked a long time. It was working still when I went to high school. When I went to college, they had an explosion that killed a lot of men there. And a cousin of my mother was named Fred Derman, went down in the mines and was the main ramrod in the rescue squadron that went down and got the bodies and the men that lived still
What
living.
caused the explosion?
I think it was dust,
Coal dust?
maybe a little black damp, gas maybe mixed with it. A spark sets it off and blows up, you know. And that's happened to a lot of mines.
What year was that?
That must have been about 1928,
28?
something like that. I'm not sure the exact date, but
And,
that's well recorded in the
yeah.
newscap.
Right.
You can find that.
Mhm.
They had a big explosion out in the high school at Wilburton that killed about 100 men.
Yeah.
I think they killed 27 over here.
Someone mentioned that the largest mine the explosion was 1917.
That may have been true.
There was one
which
that
one
said
was
200
that?
and some miners were killed.
Well, we were in, I sort of lost track. The biggest mine around here, I think, was Five Crabs, which was over here east of here.
Yeah.
Number 5. It was a shaft. You dug a hole and went down to the coal. The slopes follow the vein down. And they had both kinds of mines around here, but it was a big mine that lasted a long time. There were other mines over in that area too. And I remember Five Krebs well, but I don't remember all. And my uncle, mother's brother-in-law, was an engineer at a mine at Alderson, south of Alderson, number 5 Alderson. Then I had some friends and relatives worked in a mine called Buck, north of Alderson over there. Then when my dad left mine and went to farming, he first went to a little mine called Baker, a little town just 3 or 4 miles east of town. He worked there for just a short time. A rock fell on him. The man pulled it off, and my mother wanted him to get out. So my grandfather, Scott, my mother's father, was living out north of town. And there was an old place, I drive by it every day over there, the old Doc Tennant's farm. They had a little mine in it, and he and a man named Clint Schaefer worked that mine a little for extra money while they were farming. That only lasted about 6 months or so. Then he and another fellow opened a little mine out there just for a part-time operation all when I was about 7 years old, I guess. And they ran it for a few months and sold the coal to local people. But most of the time, from then on, he was a farmer until I went to high school. But he started working. He worked down at Carbon, east of here, and Adamson. He worked in mines down there, off and on, late in his farm period. Sometimes farmers wouldn't make very much, so he would go in the winter and room and board through the week, come home on the weekends and mine. Then after I started high school, he started working in number 4 Samples out here in the penitentiary yard. He worked there. He was gasman and straw boss and what. He had most of the good positions in mines around here and was recognized as one of the best miners in the county. He's a hard worker, a natural born miner.
What
and
does the pit boss
farmer.
do?
Pit boss was of course, the general pit boss was over the whole mine, underneath the part. Superintendent usually was over the entire thing, out and in and so forth. And he worked out there. He worked around 2 or 3 different places. I don't remember where all. And that mine, when my dad was off, was sick. When that mine had a cave-in out there and some kind of an explosion, killed a few people. But in this, somebody brought this to me not long ago, and this was I had it here on my desk. It was a mine inspector's report. Edward Boyle was the chief mine inspector for the state of Oklahoma. Then it had Martin Clark here with McAllister and Frank Haley, Henrietta, and John O'Brien, Lehigh were. Then it had a bunch of were district inspectors. Then it had a bunch of oil and gas well inspectors. And then let's see in here. It's got to have a. Let's see if I can find. Right here, my dad had it. That little bowling that he opened up over there. This is a little report on their E.H. Albert and Company, North McAllister, Oklahoma. The mine has been shut down for some time. It's been recently reopened. Workings have been broken into the abandoned workings of the Edward Slope. Now, I don't know which one is that, which are full of water. This prevents sinking any deeper unless the water is first pumped out. And it is very doubtful if there's enough real coal available. But there was. They went on and mined it. He didn't, but other people did. And then this one, Amco, this mine was formed to work B.H. Albert, who sold the property to present operators. Mm-hmm. And that was one that he opened himself over there, which was later the mine that exploded when I was at OU.
Yeah.
And let's see, what year was this report? This was 1911.
1911.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How many years did your father work in the coal mines?
Oh, I don't know, off and on. He had a long hiatus there when he went back to the farm, mm-hmm. when he did very little mining. There was a period of about 12 years that he practically didn't work at all. Mm-hmm. But before that, I suppose, let's see, I was 20. Dad was born in 1882. He started in, I imagine, about 1900 or mm-hmm. 1901, something like that, working. And he worked till about 1910 or 11. And then he was out. He didn't work anymore to amount to anything, just occasionally in a pit somewhere, till about 1923. He started mm-hmm. working part-time. Then he worked steadily from about 1924 to around early 30s. I was gone then, in school away. And he worked off and on then. He must have worked about 10. He must have worked a total of about 25 years in mm-hmm. coal mines. I'm not exactly sure of that, but something like that.
In the coal camps, you mentioned that they had the small frame houses that they rented to the coal miners. What was the rent on the houses?
I don't know. I have no idea. I was only 3 years old when we moved away from there. Mm-hmm. It wasn't much, though. I wouldn't think it'd been over $10 a month.
Yeah. You say a coal miner got $3 or $4 a month? A day?
A day, yeah.
Day. Okay.
Some of them $2 and something. Mm-hmm. 4 or 5 was tops. When Dad opened that mine, he was making $1,000 a month for a few months there, and he was really doing well.
Yeah, that's good money.
Oh yeah, in those days that was, well, more than the president of banks was making.
Yeah,
Right. But that didn't last long. Mm-hmm. Now, Mr. Pewterbaugh, Dad worked with him. You've heard of him, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
He was the biggest mine operator in this part of the country. Mm-hmm. And he later got into oil, the richest man in this area. He and my dad were together a lot. Dad worked with him some. And he started out as a coal salesman. Mm-hmm. And my dad is an underground worker. Right. But they knew one another, and Dad leased a mine from him once, and so they had a connection for years, mm-hmm. clear up till Dad died. Mm-hmm. I've known Mr. Pewterbaugh clear up till he died.
When did your father die? What year?
He died in 1948.
48.
Yeah, no, 47. He died in 1947. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
After the coal is removed from the mine, is it sent directly to the customers, or what? What happens to the coal?
Well, the coal. You see, if you go over there, there's still a little spur that goes out from the. MK&T Railroad. It went over to the mine.
Mm-hmm.
They sent coal cars over there, and they brought them up and they dumped the cars into they had a way of getting the slate out, and then they dumped the coal into the big coal cars, railroad coal cars. They would put them, take them down and put them on a sidetrack on the Acadian and have them hooked on to trains that were going wherever the customers were. It may have been Dallas or St. Louis or anywhere, wherever it might have been.
Mm-hmm. And you said that, what does the coal salesman do? What are his duties?
Well, he goes out and tries to contacts users of coal, purchasers of coal, and tries to sell his company's coal to them. Tries to make a deal to furnish so much coal for a certain period of time.
Yeah. How many mines are still active in this part of the country?
Well, I don't think there's a single underground mine active in this county at this time.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of them when I was a kid. They're all over the place here.
Well, coal may have come back.
Well, there's still a lot of coal left, especially south of here.
Mm-hmm.
And the government owns most of the coal now. They bought the coal from the Choctaw Indians.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
So I noticed they built a new electric plant about by Muskogee that's coal.
Yeah.
And has there been much of an increase in the use of coal in Oklahoma?
Well, there's been some, but of course gas is so plentiful now that coal can't compete with it when it's plentiful.
Mm-hmm.
But they converted some into coal and built some new ones that make coal. I don't know. I'm not up on that. I think you ought to go to the state mine inspector's office.
Right.
And they can give you a lot more than I can. Mm-hmm. And they have all kinds of figures of everything. There's still a federal mining office here.
There is?
Yeah, my sister-in-law works down there. It's right down this street out here. It's down a few blocks down on the right-hand side. It's been there ever since I can remember. So this is a sort of a central location for coal in a big area. But most of the coal in this part of Oklahoma now that is being mined is strip mined.
Yeah.
Underground mining is practically, I think it's completely gone in Pittsburgh County as far as I know. They thought for a while that one of the steel companies leased some coal out here south of town. They talked about Sheffield Steel, about opening one, but they never did do it. This was 20 years ago or so.
Yeah. So I guess the only areas that really mine are this area, and then up northeast Oklahoma there's some strip mines.
Well, yes. Of course they had lead and zinc mines around Miami in that area.
Yeah.
Well, of course it's Pittsburgh County and Latimer County and LaFleur and Haskell. This was a whole big mine clear on down to Cole County, west of here. You had Cole and Pittsburgh, Latimer, LaFleur, and Haskell counties. It was an entire mining region. And I think there's some mines still operating in Haskell and LaFleur counties. Yeah.
What kind of coal is produced here? Is it bituminous or lignite?
Yeah, it's by bituminous, and some of it's was very good. The burning quality. Some of it had too much sulfur, but it was a semi-anthracite.
I was going to say, is there any anthracite coal in Oklahoma?
A little, it's not real anthracite like the pencil. It's nothing like as good as that. But they have something they call semi-anthracite. They were mining over around, I think maybe Bocoshi or somewhere in there in LaFleur County.
Yeah.
They had a mine running for a while at Howe. Then Kerr McGee had one operating in up McCurtain in Haskell County, but I think that went under. I don't know what mines are operating now. Because I just haven't kept up with it.
Okay, well, I think that covers everything I was looking for.
Well, I can remember when there was a mine at Baker, one at then one out here, another one west of town, another one out to Penitentiary. one little north of town, this big bowling, little bowling.
Yeah.
5 Krebs, right on down, mine after mine, right down the Rock Island Railroad. There were, I don't know how many mines. Many. I imagine 3 or 4 dozen mines.
Yeah. But they're all closed now, aren't they?
All of them are closed, yeah. You know,
Yeah.
I'm retired in the sense that I'm not working for anybody or anything. I have my own office. The government furnishes retired speakers in the office, just like
that's good.
do the presidents, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm the only retired speaker living now, so I'm the only one that's got an office.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Oh. Well.
Yeah. Is there much? What about the forestry industry? Is it still going pretty good? The forestry?
Oh yeah, it's operating down in southeastern Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
They've got big mills down there. Have you been down there?
Yes, I've been to Wright City.
Wright City, that's where the main headquarters is.
Back when I was down there, it was still Dirk's.
Yeah, well, it's big. They left a long time ago.
Yeah, it's Weyerhaeuser bought them out here a while back.
Biggest in the country, I guess.
It is.
Yeah, it's the main industry down there.
Yes, sir. It's. This has been an interview with the Honorable Carl Albert on February 7th, 1984 by Joe Todd.